Hello and welcome back to Exothermic Plays Games. I'm Exothermic and the date today is Wednesday, August 28th, 2024. I've been doing a countdown of my favorite video games of all time through each day of the year, and coming in at number 126 is Finding Paradise. Another day, another reason to gush about how incredible Kan Gao is as a creator. I have been oh so inconveniently covering his games entirely out of order throughout the year, with A Bird Story as my 201st favorite game and Imposter Factory as my 178th favorite game. If you've watched those videos, you know how I feel about Kan Gao. The dude is remarkable, doing the bulk of the work on these games solo, including the music. He's not the only indie developer to take on the task, and certainly others have done it on a larger scale, but those games don't make me ugly cry, and I think Kan's music is a bit better. That's right, Toby Fox, I said it. Okay, for real though, no shade on Toby Fox. He's an American icon, and I'll get to gush about him later. I've said it every time, and I still mean it. Kan Gao could be an Academy Award-winning composer if he chose to pursue that. So the music is incredible, but what else are you doing? The game follows really the main characters of the To the Moon franchise, which we've somehow largely not talked about in the two games I already covered, partially by intentional omission. Allow me to introduce Dr. Neil Watts. Yes, he's magnificent. Look at that. And his close friend and co-worker, Dr. Eva Rosaline, who I cannot believe puts up with his shit. Neil very much has his moments though. As you'll see through the video, there's a lot more to Dr. Watts than meets the eye. I should probably mention at this point that this is going to be a full spoiler video, including some things we learned from Imposter Factory, but only relatively minor stuff from there as far as the narrative for that game. I no longer need to hold anything back for this game because most of what you need to know from To the Moon is referential, so we can gloss over it. If you don't want full story spoilers, pause the video and check the timestamp in the description to skip to my more spoiler-free overall thoughts at the end. Or even better yet, go buy this game and play it, then come back when you're done. It's not long, it's only about 5-ish hours. Alright, you're still here? We're good? Last chance? Cool. Neil and Eva work for a company called the Sigmund Corporation. The company provides a very unique service to people on their deathbed. You can sign a contract with the company to make you think you died fulfilling your greatest desire, whatever that may be. It's a pretty expensive ordeal and extremely controversial. The way it works is using a very fancy machine. Sigmund's doctors can mentally link up with your memories, tweak a handful of things, and then your brain and the machine do the rest of the work to fill in the gaps and readjust all of your memories to make that false reality real to you. And then, you die. Officially, Neil is the technician for the machine, and Eva is some made-up title that basically means she understands how to navigate tricky situations and find important connections in memories. It's a tough job, and requires a lot of creativity, and she's good at it. Some helpful, but not necessary information going into the game is that Freebird Games released a short mini-game, probably about 20 to 30 minutes of gameplay, if that, it's free, taking place between To the Moon and Finding Paradise, where you meet some of their other co-workers and discover that the general public is really unsure about your employer. Changing memories is a big ethical dilemma, and some people really don't like you. Your client in this game is Colin Reeds. His wife, Sophia, is one of those people that clearly doesn't like you, and you'll find it's with pretty good reason. But before you can get things going, you realize you left the paperwork in the car. When you can't find it, you call the police to have someone scan it and email it over. This coworker breaks into Neil's office and snoops around to grab the files, and then discovers that the fancy machine they should be using is hidden behind a wall in his office. The machine you're using on this case is a rig that Neil made himself, which he's not supposed to, for unknown reasons. So the coworker decides to take the papers to you in person to confront Neil about it. Once the papers are finished, you finally jump into Colin's memories. You work backwards, starting off with his memories leading up to his death. He spends a lot of time out on the balcony, clearly distracted by something. But when he goes to talk to Sigmund and set up the contract, he doesn't actually know what he wants. He just wants to feel fulfilled, despite all of the things he's done. He's not even unhappy. He's a retired pilot, he's flown all around the world and seen all sorts of incredible things, and has a wife and son, Asher, both of which he loves dearly, and they love him, and he doesn't want any of that to change. So your job is pretty open-ended, meaning it's very difficult. The way you navigate from memory to memory is by locating mementos and feeding little data orbs into them. And then once you complete all of the orbs in there, you solve a little sliding puzzle thing. It's easy. Once you collect all of the important data in a memory, you can travel to the next memory that's connected via the memento. The tricky thing with this case, however, is that because you're using Neil's bootleg machine, things go a bit wrong. You're supposed to go in order backwards until you get far enough back to adjust just what you need to and then have the machine finish everything. But instead, you find yourself bouncing back and forth opposite ends of Colin's life, going from adult to childhood and adult to childhood, gradually moving inward, spiraling on one crucial moment in the middle. If you played A Bird Story, which did release between To the Moon and Finding Paradise, seemingly totally unconnected narratively, you discover that Colin is the character you played in that game. You pick up pretty close to right after A Bird Story ended, where his bird friend has returned to nature and Colin is now again an extremely lonely, depressed child. He's still fascinated with planes and keeps making paper airplanes. While throwing some off the balcony of his apartment, he makes a friend who moved in across the street. Faye is a girl about Colin's age on the balcony across from his, and they become fast friends. As you yo-yo back and forth throughout Colin's life, you can start to piece together all of the things that make him who he is. As a child, he was always alone except for his one friend, Faye, and had parents that always had to leave on business. As a pilot, he frequently had to leave his family for work. As a child, he reluctantly started playing the cello, which he begrudgingly stuck with, despite not being very good at it. This is how he met Sophia, who is an extremely gifted pianist. The moment he went to that first rehearsal with her, he fell head over heels, leading to developing a stronger musical appreciation through their relationship. In a memory where Sophia plays her last concert as a professional pianist, they share a beautiful, intimate moment where both of them cool their nerves by playing a special duet together in the rehearsal room. Basically, Colin plays scales on the cello and Sophia accompanies him on the piano with chords that accentuate the movement of the scales, allowing something so simple to become a moving melody. That all sounds pretty easy to pull off, but it's harder than you would think, and Kangao is great. This is one of my favorite moments of the entire game, showcasing two people who have grown together for much of their lives, finding solace in simple music in just a tiny room, making something incredible out of something simple every single day. Not to brag, but when you find someone that you can do that with for the rest of your life, it's the most amazing thing you can imagine. And then things get weird. The memento here is the cello case, and you go back in time to Colin learning cello for the first time as a kid, and he can barely even play the scales. Meanwhile, Faye is pretty decent at guitar, and they're hanging out on the agreement that she's going to help him practice cello. In an effort to boost his confidence, she tells him to just play the scales, no matter how bad he is. And then she accompanies him on the guitar in the exact same way Sophia did in the previous memory. Not just similar either. It's the same chords, the same song. It's at this point things become very clear that there is something wrong here. Not just regarding Colin's vague contract, but also the idea that Faye is with him everywhere in his earlier memories, and not even a single mention of her in the later ones. There's also the matter of a little notebook that Colin's kept since childhood, writing in it, then seemingly tearing out the pages and gluing more pages in for much of his life. You actually find the notebook early in the game in the attic of his house, not in memories but in reality. Except all of the pages are blank. His wife knows nothing about the notebook. The pages are always blank whenever she's looked. He has this notebook in every early memory, and like Faye, it's gone in later memories. It's not just that Faye's present either. She's vividly present, with a lot of other memories being foggy, presumably due to Colin's deteriorating mind on his deathbed. So how is it that all of these early memories, which are often things that fade and muddle together over someone's lifetime, are all so pristine, especially in regards to Faye? And where did she go? She convinced him to keep at it with the cello. She convinced him to even go to the rehearsal he met Sophia at. She convinced him to sign up for flight school. As you keep bouncing back and forth and things get weirder and weirder, you eventually land almost at the middle, but not quite. Colin is graduating flight school. It's a big day. Faye is there for it, but he has to go see Sophia. You'd think that's where the memory goes, but the problem is it doesn't go. Like at all. It becomes apparent that something is terribly wrong. Neil hops out of the memories to run diagnostics on the machine, while Eva stays inside to keep looking for the missing memory data. He goes to the car to grab a tool for the machine, and along the way runs into a small child you meet at the very beginning of the game when you arrive, like at the very start. She asks about Colin because they were friends, and he showed her how to write messages with invisible ink. At this point, everything clicks for Neil. The notebook is blank because it's written in invisible ink, and it's hidden because it's a private journal. A journal of Faye. Not as in belonging to Faye, but rather it is Faye. She was never real, and is instead an imaginary friend of Colin's. His first ever friend was the bird you rescued in a bird story, and after that, he needed something to fill the void, and created Faye in his mind, who stuck with him for much of his life. Because she was so embedded in his subconscious, the memory of her was so powerful, it was able to override the bootleg system, because it turns out Neil had been doing a bunch of really sketchy stuff, including scripting his own programs and removing a ton of security features. He gets back into the memories, and Eva is gone. He confronts Faye, assuming that Faye did something to Eva, who drops the pretense of just being a memory at this point. I should probably mention that this game has a very serious narrative, and tugs at the heartstrings the whole way through. But it's also absolutely hilarious. Gal's greatest strength as a writer is balancing emotions with comedic relief. I can be crying, then laughing, then crying again, all in back-to-back-to-back scenes within like a minute. The whole sequence of Neil getting his absolute ass kicked by Faye in numerous ways is some of the funniest stuff in the game. But it's also contextualized by her wanting you out of Colin's memories and to stop messing with everything. Oh, I should mention there's a corgi that's basically Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, but as a corgi. It's a show that Colin watched as a kid. You get corgis thrown at you. It's great. But eventually that silliness has to end when Eva returns. She had gotten out of the machine and grabbed the coworker that came with the papers earlier. That coworker is one of the top technicians in the entire company, and she was able to code a patch for Neil's bootleg machine to shut Faye back out of the controls. Finally, you're able to get to the center of the vortex that you've been getting sucked into this whole time. The pivotal moment in Colin's entire life. The last time he talked to his imaginary friend, Faye. Really, it's a conversation, of course, with himself, about a lot of things. Faye's ready to go away and move on from Colin's life. Colin doesn't really want her to leave. In the end, he understands that he doesn't need her anymore, though. He has real relationships and real friends. Sophia is the greatest friend he could ever ask for, and they have a son on the way. He's achieved many of his wildest dreams and is now a commercial airline pilot and can go to all of the places he's dreamed of seeing for his entire life. He closes the journal and vows to really focus on the here and the now, get his head out of the clouds and be present with the people he loves. All of this is great for Colin, but there's still one problem. How do you fulfill the contract? How do you make him feel like he's had a fulfilling life? As Neil and Eva are trying to figure that out, Faye's been fighting back and starting to gain control again. But also, critically importantly, Colin is dying. With no other options, Neil has a heart-to-heart with Faye and agrees that she really wants Colin to die happily. He grants her full control of the machine, and Eva and Neil get out of there before Colin dies with them still in his memories, which I assume would be a big problem. Before Neil leaves, Faye thanks Neil and says that maybe part of what Colin wanted all along was for Faye to meet someone, for her to not just be real in his mind, but to someone else too. And that's found in Neil. The sequence that follows is Faye fixing everything, simply by removing Sigmund Corporation from the equation. If Colin never saw the advertisement for Sigmund, he never would have wondered what if. And now, with that gone, he passes peacefully. Everything gets packed up, the family is given time to grieve, and Neil and Eva are on their way, another job done. A few days later, Eva is at Colin's funeral, but Neil is nowhere to be seen. She calls him, and he explains he can't keep going to these things, and given how Sophia felt about their job to begin with, he was worried he'd make it more uncomfortable for them, so he decided to stay home. But it turns out that's quite an elaborate lie. He's at the office, working on more custom programming for the machine, and now the other coworker is helping him. In fact, he took a copy of Faye's memory programming and is working on some concoction. We still don't know what exactly they're up to, but here's the Imposter Factory spoilers I talked about. If you wanted to watch this but skip those, now's the time. Okay, the person that created the technology that Sigmund's whole machine is based on is Neil's mother, who died due to complications from his birth. At the end of Imposter Factory, it's revealed that world is a simulation within a simulation within a simulation and so on, with the actual reality being far in the future of the franchise. Neil is an old man and he's up to something, and I'm so excited to find out what's next. Finding Paradise is a joy from start to finish, and by joy, I mean I got a bottle of water to rehydrate from all of the crying. Kangao is again a master storyteller and composer. I've been listening to the soundtrack again while scripting for this video, and the music alone had me crying again. The game weaves a striking and memorable narrative through a mystery of slices of Colin's life, threading the needle through serious and comedic moments that creates a remarkable 5 hours that's worth far more than the sum of its parts. Yes, the gameplay is simple and borderline non-existent. Yes, the puzzles are very easy. Yes, that doesn't matter. Yes, I keep wanting this to become a film series. Yes, I'll talk about Kangao again this year. But you'll have to wait quite a while for that.
Straight
Join me tomorrow as I talk about my 125th favorite game where I blitz through thousands of years of human history.